Mark, welcome to the show.
Hey, glad to be here.
We're very happy to have you. So, first off, why don't you tell me about your company, Warehouse Republic?
So I started selling on Amazon as an FBA seller in 2015, and after a couple seasons, really figured out we needed to kind of figure out our own logistics, just to save money and help with the seasonality of product. And so I started looking around at a warehousing partner. Later, I didn't even know it was called the 3PL at that point, but 3PL stands for third party logistics.
Mm-hmm.
And 3PLs at that point wouldn't even talk to us because we weren't big enough. And so after I kind of figured out the warehousing piece for ourselves using, friends and partners and things like that, I said, man, I think there are other people out there like us that need this. And so we opened in 2018, moved to Southern California, slept on an air mattress for 3 months while getting used to, or not getting used to, but getting everything up and running. And here we are today, still serving the same FBA customers.
No, that's great. And so, to my knowledge, as you have said yourself, you didn't really just randomly come up with this idea. You didn't have a shower thought of this would be a great thing to do. Is
right.
I read a really good interview or a really good piece about how you actually had that personal experience that spurned this idea, and I'm interested if you could kind of peel back those layers specifically about that experience you had getting stuck with all this these products in an Amazon warehouse and how you had to leverage that into essentially this business.
Yeah, so effectively what ended up happening was, we tried a bunch of different products, and kind of the first, what I would say, bulky product that we did was etched wine glasses.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you don't think a wine glass takes up that much, it's about that by that. But when you've got, 7,500 of them,
Jeez.
Yeah, it takes up a lot more space. So what ends up happening is we had two SKUs that we launched with. The first one absolutely killed. We were sold out before the end of Christmas. We were all like, man, we wish we had more of that one. The second one sold about 25% of what we brought into the States, and it just did not have the same kind of traction. So here we are, after the Christmas rush, where, anybody who's got a seasonal business is going to sell 65, 70, even more, maybe percent of their stock during those 30 days between kind of, Black Friday, Cyber Monday to about, December 21st or so. Mm-hmm. And, we've got 5,000 or 6,000 units left over of this one SKU, and no amount of price cutting or anything like that was doing anything. So you roll back around the year, and we've been paying storage fees on these, all through Q4, and then all the way through August, September. And then you start getting into long-term storage fees, and we had to bring them back at some point. And what we found is just how expensive that was. And, we said, look, man, we really need to figure out how to bring these things stateside, land them, and then drip, the drip strategy, as everybody says, and drip them into Amazon.
Mm-hmm.
So that the need for that partner, that kind of middleman to momentarily or for some period of time hold the product, was what we needed ourselves. And then, there are some things that come, you get more flexibility on your product. Like if you do that kind of strategy, selling omni-channel, if you don't want Amazon to do multi-channel fulfillment, mm-hmm. which I think they've really even started stepping back from to a degree, or at least making it more challenging. But if you want to really control your own data, control the flow of your products, we said, look, this is the answer. And so that's kind of how we went for it. I mean, that was our customer need.
Mm-hmm. No, that's awesome. That's a really cool story. And so now you have your own warehouses where you run that storage for Amazon FBA sellers instead of the Amazon FBA warehouse. I'm curious, do you personally own the warehouses, or are they leased from a third party?
No, they're leased. Right now, I mean, they were giving away buildings in Southern California, like in 2008. I mean, if you bought the land, and now, I mean, you've got some of these things going for, a 200, let's just say, the 150,000 square foot building we're in right now, I know was appraised somewhere in the $30 million range. So wow. The operating company, and that was a few years ago, so it's probably gone up.
Oh, sure.
The operating company that we run, Warehouse Republic, is, that that we lease. We have partners. Our East Coast warehouse is actually owned by one of our investors and somebody who's a very strategic partner to us. Real estate's something we would love to get into, but it's really it's two separate business models. And so, it's great if you can do it, but like right now we're focused on really just serving customers and, actually doing the operating piece of it.
No, that's fascinating. It reminds me kind of the story of Ray Kroc and McDonald's and how he eventually was kind of getting pushed out. So he got into the real estate business instead of the fast food business. And I think that's kind of an interesting look at it. So you own or you lease 3 different warehouses. Is that correct? One in California, one in Texas, and one in North Carolina. Is that accurate?
Texas is forthcoming probably in the next, I'd say 2 to 3 years from now. Right now we're focused. We've got one in Southern California located in Ontario. And then we've also got another one in Reidsville, North Carolina, which is kind of I call it a suburb of Greensboro, North Carolina. But in Reidsville, North Carolina, which is just, it's kind of northern North Carolina, west of Raleigh-Durham by about, hour and a half, 2 hours.
Sure. No, I think that's really good location. Who handles the actual shipping and the logistics of parties when you're trying to move products around? Is that you guys, or do you or the clients that you work with provide that sort of the shipping and logistics?
So the majority, in any e-com seller that's selling through FBA, you're going to do everything you can to run your shipping through Amazon partner carriers. Whether that's using their FedEx account, not their FedEx, their UPS account, their LTL shipping, Amazon transportation, any of the partnerships they have with other large trucking companies. That's going to get you the best rates. That's kind of what. That's what really part of what really makes Amazon FBA such an incredible offering when they opened it up back in, I think, 2006, 2007, was that they were allowing you to leverage their buying power for freight and moving goods around and fulfillment and things like that. We do have, we've grown to lots of omni-channel sellers. And what we mean by that is somebody's not only on FBA, they're selling on their own Shopify site. They may have a Walmart marketplace set up. They may sell on Macy's. They, any of those sorts of things, Tundra, Fair. And so we just, we will work with our warehouse management system, and we'll make sure we've got the inputs in to basically ship out. And, there we use, especially for our customers that are doing their own Shopify, their own BigCommerce, their own web fulfillment. We offer typically our rates, and that's typically UPS, FedEx, USPS. The relationship with DHL, we don't really have a great one established. It's not that there's nothing wrong with DHL. It's just we don't. It's not where we've gone at this point. We don't have the volume that really fits what their shipping model wants.
And what are the specific services that you provide for clients? You hold on and store their products, but you also do a lot more than that.
So you have to think of it from the perspective of like how it comes in. So it comes in, It can be container floor loaded, it can be palletized, it can be small, it can be parcel, individual parcels. Like we've got some companies that will ship us, hey, we've got 40 cartons of master cartons of our goods coming in, please receive it. And that'll come on a UPS truck, just like it might to your house. We've got the LTL piece of it, which is, items show up in a truck. There might be 20 pallets in a truck, and 3 of those pallets are our customers. We unload them, we check them in, we put them up in the racks. And then, of course, there's floor loaded containers, which anybody who's doing any ocean shipping, most often to maximize space, it's gonna come in, just you open the doors of the container, and all of a sudden it's, this just giant mass of boxes. And so, the most basic thing any 3PL does is they're going to receive in those goods, sort them, compare them to, what your customer said was coming. Can we verify that actually, what they said is coming is coming? We'll put it up in the shelves. We'll do any kind of, picking and pulling whenever they put an order in, and we'll ship it to wherever they want it shipped. That's your most basic, kind of in and out. We hold the goods for a while, we ship them out. That's your most basic service.
Mm-hmm.
We have a lot of good customers where, let's say there's a snafu with the manufacturer and they put the wrong label on. So we'll pull everything out, we'll open them up, and we'll re-sticker all the products with the appropriate SKU.
Mm-hmm.
That's like stickering projects. We'll do kitting sometimes. So a customer realizes, oh my gosh, man, I've got these 3 products that are all selling well, but if I combine them, they sell really well. And so while they work that out with their manufacturer, like we can do the kitting piece of it. In the last, I would say, year, 2 years, we've really gotten a lot more into the reverse logistics piece. So what's what's talked about in my world a lot right now is returns, and returns have turned into this $1 trillion issue. And I mean, and that's accounting the brick and mortar returns and everything like that. But your average e-com returns, they estimate at 25 to 35%. And e-com sales last year just were like right at $1 trillion. So you've got $250 to $350 billion worth of returns happening. And in a lot of cases, what your warehouse will typically do is they'll just kind of put it in the corner and be like, okay, guys, what do you want us to do with this? And, 9 times out of 10, if it's a very valuable product, then they'll liquidate it. And, that's where you go to like B-Stock or Optoro, and you'll buy truckloads of returned goods for, like a couple $1,000s, and you'll bid them up, and, you get the truckloads in, 30% of it you throw out, and then the rest of it you try to auction off or do whatever with. Now customers are really, really looking for partners, and this is what we're trying to react to, who can bring the product in, grade it, make sure it's still, is it like new? Is it used good condition? Is it used, average condition, whatever it may be,
Mm-hmm.
and come up with an option for like what those customers are going to do afterwards. So that's a very, very messy, very, very labor intensive thing, but that's also something else we've kind of come to do. And then there are other things that are like, I would call it advanced kitting. So like, influencer boxes and things like that. Like, I mean, we can do all that sort of stuff as well.
But what I'm hearing you say, Mark, is that you're trying to essentially anticipate the customer's needs a little bit.
Absolutely. I mean, you can't and I think that's true of any business out there. It's like, if you're not serving your customer, if you're not really going and really thinking about where your customer needs you to go and help them out, and and it can't just be like a bunch of little one-offs. I mean, these are trends. These are widespread trends we're looking at and analyzing. But if you're not going to adapt, then you're going to die. And it might be a slow, painful death. It might take a long time, but we're trying to aggressively grow, and looking and anticipating what is going to be the most valuable thing to our customers, not just today, but in the next 5-10 years.
And speaking of trends, I want to talk about something that you're a big proponent of, that is, I think, a trend that's moving forward. I mean, it's very interesting now in the climate, but you're a strong proponent of paying your warehouse workers wages above the industry standard. So, going so far as saying yourself that minimum wage delivers minimum results. How has that mindset positively impacted your company and team morale there?
Well, I think it's an interesting thing. And I mean, I want to be I feel like the industry, to get an industry worker worth his salt at this point, you're so far, California just passed, I think, the minimum wage of $15, right? And so warehouse workers are all starting a few dollars higher than that. Like, you can't get to even come in your warehouse for minimum wage in any state that I know of at this point. And I mean, that's probably not a fair statement, because I'm not operating in Seattle, I'm not operating in New York. So it's like, maybe those states are different. But from what I see, at least in the markets of, North Carolina, California, and then what I know about the Texas market, almost all warehouse operations are starting them like fairly high. But what that means is, I mean, if, so at least if you're kind of in that band and you're paying these guys, and these men and women to come in and, want to be there, you treat them with dignity and respect, and then you really work on training them. And, I tell all of my people, like, if there's anything, I can do for you, then, let me know. We'll help you. We understand that not everybody is here for a career. And so, I've got some guys, for instance, there's a gentleman that's working for me now. He's been working for me since he's 18. And he said from the very beginning, he said, hey, my dream is to work for the sheriff's department or to work for the highway patrol. And we said, great. Well, let us know how we can help with that. And so, as it relates to being background references and things like that, writing letters of recommendation, those are things that we do for our employees when we can do it. Kind of back to your original question of, what does it mean? Like, how does that work out for you? It's like, I would argue that if you're not at least within that industry band, which is still a few dollars over minimum wage, that you're not gonna have a business. I mean, and these people can go and get a job. They can call a temp agency, be on a job the next day. They can go and they can apply at Amazon if they haven't before. I mean, maybe even if they have and they're eligible for rehire, and then go get another job there. I mean, it's just, I think, the pay is only one tool of differentiation. I think the big thing that you have to do is like treating them with dignity and respect, doing things like, having team building exercises, really working and speaking, working with the individuals. And fortunately, like, in a company where you've got 600 employees, that becomes much more challenging. And I mean, in our spaces, like our operations are very much smaller than that. And so I'm able to know everybody by name. I'm able to, speak with them one-on-one. We celebrate birthdays internally and stuff like that. So, I mean, there's a little bit of charm of being able and, hominess, I guess you could say, of having a smaller operation. And I think a lot about how are we going to maintain that as best as possible when that headcount does go up over 100 and that kind of stuff. So,
and it's not an easy task to have 460 employees and still make it feel like a tight-knit community. So that's a tough balance, and I commend you for being able to do that. Just to kind of double back a little bit, I'm interested in what sort of products you typically get and store at your warehouses, and even more specifically, what type of products you can't because of maybe some sort of regulatory infractions that could arise.
Well, I mean, it really depends. So, we've got, if you're going to store food, you have to be FDA certified.
Sure.
In North Carolina, for instance, we have our team is all hazardous material certified. And so we've got the option to store up to they're certified to a certain type of product, for instance. In this case, those guys can handle butane and things like that.
Okay.
So you really, and this goes back to kind of following that customer need. Like when you get a customer and the warehouse location is right for them, their operation is going to fit with your operation, that kind of thing. Oftentimes doing the compliance piece is you just have to sit down and figure out what that means and go after it. So, I would say the most typical thing that we sell is anything on Amazon that's typically non-hazardous. With our North Carolina facility, we got certified to handle hazardous material because of a particular customer. And that's turned out really, really good for us. And, in some cases, like, with an FDA certification and things like that, it's a little bit more of a rigorous process because, I mean, you've got food in there. You don't want rodents around, and you have to have, you're not supposed to be able to see daylight in the warehouse, like that kind of
very specific temperature range too.
Temperature, not so much if it's shelf stable, but on your cold storage or your temperature controlled storage, like that's something you really don't want to mess around with. So if somebody comes to me and says, like, we've had people say, hey, can you store wine? And for a myriad of reasons, we can't. I mean, and one, the alcohol control piece of it is one thing, but also the temperature piece, to your point, is another. And so like gummy bears and things like that, like supplement gummies, a lot of times we say, okay, well, I mean, the ambient temperature of this warehouse might get up to 85 degrees. Is that going to be a problem for the product?
Sure.
And sometimes it is, and sometimes it's not. So
That's a lot to think about. How do you receive orders from a client when you need to send out some of their products from your facility? How does that process work? Because I imagine you have, hundreds, if not thousands of clients. How do you know how to move it around essentially?
Sure. So, we work with, and I, in keeping with that original, like, hey, nobody will talk to us, we're too small. We were trying to be the antithesis of that. So I've got customers that hold 2 pallets in the warehouse, and most of those guys are going to just manually upload their orders. And if they've got a trickle of orders, that's not a problem. We'll allow it. And they've got a CSV file that they can directly upload into what's called the warehouse management system, or in the industry is a WMS. So the WMS, basically everything goes into that, and then that's what sends the signal back to the floor that says, hey, this is where this needs to go. Your typical customer is going to have what's called a tech integration, which is literally just a bridge that's built between like Shopify and our WMS.
Okay.
And then so Shopify says, hey, this is what we've got. And then so we'll fulfill that order. And then, in a given time interval, it's usually, every 15 or every 18 or every 24 hours, whatever you set it to, the WMS writes back to Shopify, make sure you adjust the inventory. This is your inventory, like at the end of the day. So, and what happens is, so whatever that count was at the beginning of the day, let's say Shopify says, okay, well, we're going to sell 2 of these 20 units. And then so Shopify says, we only have 18. But then the warehouse the next day either sends that confirming signal, inventory count's 18, or inventory count is now, we received another 100. So it's 118 kind of a deal. So there's got to be this this bridge that goes back and forth between the marketplace or the website or whatever it may be and the WMS. And then when we ship it, we've got another integration that goes with the shipping software that shops rates and things like that. And then it writes back, when we close out orders, the tracking numbers and everything like that then get written back to the Shopify thing later on. So it's all tech integrations and that kind of thing is really the way to go.
Yeah, that is symbiosis. I'm curious, Mark, what your shipping times are currently like in terms of the actual logistics. I'll just give this in a 2-parter. What is your shipping time like? And is it only limited to the United States?
We're only tracking it related to the United States.
Okay.
Everything. So we, with most of our customers, if something comes in by noon, then we ship it out the same day.
Okay.
And so that's it leaves our facility.
That's great though.
And then, but I mean, our guarantee is, so there's that, but then it's like, depending on where the origination shipment is and then where it's going. So if it's going to New York, that could take, 3-4 days once it's left our building. If it's going to, Southern California, it gets there the next day. If it's going to, if it gets up to like San Francisco, Seattle and that kind of thing, it's 2 days. Like, so that it really becomes more dependent on the zone shipping maps of like UPS and FedEx and USPS. I find that, during the pandemic, and this is something I think that's important for not only business owners, because a lot of people don't believe it when we say this, but like, and it hadn't happened for a while, but, there were times like when in peak season, it's not uncommon for, if you've got a lot of volume. So it's like, if you're just shipping a few parcels a day, UPS will send, a guy in a truck and he'll scan individually each item. Well, now if you're shipping several thousand parcels a day, there's a guy in a truck that is basically just going to back his trailer up and you're going to load pallets onto his truck. And then he's going to take them to the fulfillment center. And that's where they get scanned in. So the UPS guys on the truck and the FedEx people, they do not carry scanners. So they don't have the ability to scan in that product. And so it's really, really important for the warehouse to like say every single tracking number and then have it in a sheet or some kind of module. And then when they see the number on the truck, they say, okay, this truck at this time with this trailer number is where these goods are, and scan it out. And that's the impetus there is on the warehouse, because what happens is like sometimes, I mean, you know, everybody's is good as we are and as good as UPS and FedEx are, that trailer will sometimes go into a yard and it'll sit for 2 or 3 days, and they lose track of it. And then so we've got customers yelling at our customer, you know, end users and purchasers yelling at our customers, and our customers saying, why haven't you shipped this? And we're saying, no, we shipped it. It's probably in a yard somewhere. And then you have to go call UPS and say, hey, this trailer, and, you know, calling them is typically going to be like, all right, we'll look into it. And then eventually all of a sudden, 4 or 5 days later, everything will just start moving, and you have a tracking number. So it's gotten so much better. But I mean, during the pandemic, that was
well, I bet it was a mess.
Yeah. So
how does that impact shrinkage? And I don't know if our audience knows what that is, but that's essentially like losses at a warehouse, right? Things that could be missing or damaged or stolen.
Yep.
So how does that affect shrinkage? And then I've got a follow-up for you there as well.
So that particular, I mean, the way that they're operating doesn't typically affect shrinkage. I mean, if it's on a truck and it moves after a few days, rarely are people gonna do anything about it, because I mean, usually the description I just said was UPS ground.
Sure.
And most people, if they really, really need it, they're going to 2-day it or overnight it. And that's a whole nother, like, I mean, you hand that to a person, or we'll even take it to a store. Where the shrinkage actually happens, and, you know, let's say you've got a pallet of goods and you've got a master carton that's kind of got a bulging, like, let's say it's some sort of fabric. And so a guy moves that thing in on the forklift, and it rips through the stretch wrap, and you know, there's some dust on the box or whatever it may be, and the shipping label falls off. That is surprisingly, it's not, it doesn't happen often, but it does happen. And so you've got your customers, you know, items, as carton is no longer, nobody knows who it is, where it came from, or anything like that, because that shipping label comes off. And so, you know, that's probably the number one place, I think, since we've started business, that we've seen any kind of shrinkage.
Wow. How does it compare to Amazon's? How does your shrinkage compare to Amazon's?
It's a good question. I don't know that they actually, I mean, they may publish those numbers.
Sure.
Me as a seller, I remember in 2015, they would lose entire pallets of product. And
wow.
No, I mean, and that was at a time when they would just compensate you. They would say, okay, well, we know you had, you know, 100 units of product on here, and your payout was going to be $6 an item. Here, we're just going to pay you $600 as if you sold it. That was, you know, of course, you wanted the sales traffic, but I mean, that was a pretty fair way of going about it.
Yeah, but that's also not the same thing, because then I can't review your product either. Exactly. You know, I can't even receive the product to say I liked it, I disliked it.
I agree.
You know, that is probably the best case scenario, but it also sucks, if I'm being honest.
It's the best case scenario in the shipping world, though, because, like, you know, if that happens to us, and I mean, it really depends, it's circumstantial, but, you know, every 3PL out there, the way we get insurance is like, it's based on a weight replacement value. So let's say you've got 500,
like how heavy the product is.
And typically what happens is we'll only replace like 25 to 50 cents per pound of whatever it is. So anybody that comes to our warehouse, we say, look, in a total loss situation, you know, fingers crossed that never happens, double crossed actually, you know, if you had 1,000 pounds worth of goods, we're going to give you $500, and that's the high end of the market typically. And so we tell everybody, I say, look, the most contentious thing that I feel like in my customer contract to you is my replacement value of goods, and you really need to hold your own insurance, because if you don't hold your own product insurance and this happens, I know that rarely is 50 cents a pound going to cover, whatever it is you have in my warehouse.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that's if there was a big takeaway, from a contractually speaking with any of your listeners, if you're looking at using a 3PL, make sure you're aware of that and that you do hold your own insurance, because that's not any particular warehouse being shysty. That's how the insurance companies will write the policies.
No, that's good advice. I think that's extremely smart way to look about it. What are some of the obstacles that sellers deal with when using Amazon FBA storage facilities that Warehouse Republic has been able to mitigate?
Yeah, I think, especially as sellers are a little newer, like when they're putting up new products, when they're doing this, or they're trying new boxes or something like that, we are able to really like take a look at it when it comes off the container, and we're saying, hey, or even that, here's an example. There's these things called descansers where it's like, it's big, a giant silica pads is what they are. So like the things that like keep moisture.
Yeah.
We've reported back to a lot of our customers like, hey, you've got a lot of condensation in this container. You really need to ask your manufacturer to put these silica pads, because we're seeing a lot of damage. We're seeing mold. We're seeing some stuff on your boxes. And then we'll open up their product and we'll make sure, we'll see that kind of thing. The wavy cardboard kind of thing with a little bit of mold on it. And we'll say, what do we want to do with these products? How do we want to get them ready to go in? We know you don't want to have a negative customer experience. Amazon will probably flag them as damaged, but if they don't, they make it to a customer. Nobody wants that review where received the product, looked like it was left in a puddle and it got mold on it. I'm allergic.
That's a worst case scenario.
Yeah. So I think kind of being your local eyes on the product and making sure that we call out things like this box is getting very, very damaged, or this box actually is over 25 inches, which is going to sit you up into a new, this might get rejected. It's overweight. We might want you. Do you want us to rebox these things? Like, so it's kind of like a final, because it's our job to understand what Amazon wants and their shipping requirements of sending stuff in, and advise the customer to say, hey, this is something you want to think about. We recognize you might see a lot of damage with this configuration. Another customer solved it like this. That might help. That kind of stuff.
No, that anticipatory effort again coming through. I'm interested, Mark, in how you can balance that relationship of kind of competing with Amazon while also working with them.
So you ever, there's a famous Harvard note out there. It's called Porter's Five Forces, written by a guy named Michael Porter. And this note has been around forever, and it's kind of it's scripture in a way. And so it's like, when you look at it, it's like, and I'm not going to recite all the forces, but it's like, your supplier, competitor, vendor, like it's like, what are in the world of business, like where do you sit? And of course, Amazon is almost everything.
Sure.
So I mean, they hit all five forces, and so Amazon is very, very good at these very basic things of pulling stuff in and then shipping it out when everything goes perfectly. And so, but when you're the everything store and you've crowdsourced, Spider-Man sewing thimbles, because, only some person in Des Moines, Iowa, in their sewing club who really also loves comic books is going to know that there's a market for that, right? And they're going to know what to say about it and how to market it. Amazon couldn't hire enough people and they couldn't raise enough money to fund all take that product risk. So in that world, when you offer all these different things, there are always going to be these little exceptions. And, for them, they want to do what they do best: receive product, ship it out super fast, and provide an excellent customer experience. All that other stuff is going to fall to other people. And they've got these really interesting, impetuses out there. But I mean, the just on the return side, I mean, Amazon is likely leaking billions of dollars a month. I have, without saying names or anything along those lines, I have a colleague of mine who has probably 50 plus pallets of completely refurbished Apple product. like that's been sitting on his shelf for 2 years, that just somehow ended up in his warehouse because he was, doing refurbishments and things like that. And that product is sellable, or it was sellable 2 years ago, and now it's 2 years obsolete. And so the question is, they could have gotten all that refurbished sale on that, but it's just sitting there now. And eventually, and it just goes to show, I mean, even the company that looks like they're the most buttoned up and, they've got chinks in their own armor, where, it's not that that's not going to sink them. It's just a place where it's like, if that's, in that one warehouse, that's happening all over the place.
Yeah. No, that's just one example.
Correct.
Yeah. How have you, Mark, been able to grow the company Warehouse Republic in the last 5 years? That's about how long it's been around, correct?
Yeah, actually, I moved out 5 years, about 4 days ago, 5 days ago. So
congratulations. That's amazing.
Yeah. We started the
milestone.
company. We started the company, but I mean, the actual day, we started it in January, but the actual day I moved into the warehouse and started sleeping on that air mattress was like a May 6th. So
your first night's sleep in the warehouse is what counts.
Right.
Yeah,
exactly. That was when it got really real. Anyway, and it was also an interesting awakening to California, because it's like, I remember waking up that morning, because I stayed the May 5th in a hotel, and there was a minor earthquake. And I heard, like, it sounded like somebody with a drink cart was going down the hall, and it was just like rattling the drink cart. And I was like, oh, I'm in California.
Yeah, what a welcome party.
Yeah. So no tornadoes that I know of, but earthquakes, a whole new thing. But yeah, no. So 5 years, our market has just evolved so fast, and I mean, it's if you just look at everything from real estate, the first rent we paid in our sublease was 55 cents per square foot, all in. Now, for a while there, in the last 6 months, you had stuff going to almost $2 per square foot, all in per month. And, that's almost, close to 4 times growth just in the rental rates. So when we started, it took about 3 or 4 months to get ramped up, and we would just take everything that we could take. And, if somebody asked, can you do this? Absolutely, we can do it. And so, we've really focused over the years on serving that Amazon niche. And I think during the pandemic, Amazon said, we're not selling stuff that's not, necessary for daily use. We're not selling, if it's alcohol, if it's hand sanitizer, whatever it may be, that's for sale. But all this other stuff you can't even ship in right now. And so we became, within a matter of months, we'd just taken over, a building, and we were probably about, half full, to being, probably 30% over capacity. Like just overnight. It felt like, but it was over a couple months. And I remember in the month of August, 2020, it was like we were signing up 2 and 3 people a day, it seemed like. And, that's largely exaggerated, because like one client for a large warehouse might be 10,000 pallets. For us, it might have been 5, it might have been 10, it might have been 100. And so that complexity really was a challenge for us and then we had to kind of unravel that issue, into 2021. And then really, since May of 2021, everything's run very, very smoothly. And then we expanded, and that's been kind of its own thing. And so we really focus on FBA removals and things like that, and kind of following that customer need. And I think, where we're focused now, especially in our California location, is, as I look at FBA selling and that kind of thing, I think you have to address the fact that what's happening in that market is, around 2/3 of your FBA sellers at this point are actually Chinese owned or Asian owned companies. And, I've spoken with some very, very large sellers who are looking at it, and they're saying, look, the value chain is moving back. So it's like, most people used to go on Alibaba and they'd work with a trading company. And everybody, during 2015 would say, the Chinese market and the Chinese sellers will never be able to compete with us. Like, they don't know how to market to the United States. Fast forward 8 years, and that's absolutely not the case. And so we find what I'm noticing more and more is like that trading company is now saying, well, why am I selling to this guy? There's plenty of data out there that shows how I can market a follow-on product, and those margins are just getting squeezed and squeezed more and more.
Wow.
We're really focusing on, how do we help our customers, not only with the returns piece and be sticky there, but also how do we get better and better at individual order fulfillment. And so we're doing this blended strategy of, yes, we're still handling bulk goods, we're still doing carton picks, but we're also really focusing on reverse logistics, re-commerce, that kind of thing. And then we're also focusing on the direct to consumer order fulfillment, which we've always done it. It just has been kind of a peripheral, 5 to 15% of our business. Now we're looking to take that up to be a lot more balanced, like in that 30 to 40% range.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's a great idea, because I feel like it's probably easier to grow when you can plug up all those leaks that you're having in terms of these returns and these sort of losses. You could take that money and help expand with it or compete with China and all these other things. So what I'm hearing you say, Mark, is it's kind of a two-pronged approach a little bit.
Well, absolutely. And I mean, there's another trend that's going on with the nearshoring, like, and reshoring of stuff. So, it may surprise people, but China's not our largest trading partner, believe it or not. I think they're number 3. It's what I read. I actually read that in an article in the Wall Street Journal the other day. But we still have this great relationship with Mexico, and I think there are a lot of things to work out there. But there are all these options for warehouses to help and to figure out, and logistics partners to help, their customers and that kind of thing. I mean, I'll give you a very brief example. It doesn't take long to get certified as a free trade zone, for instance. And so if somebody's reshoring their stuff, and what a free trade zone effectively means is that you can import product, and while we hold it, it won't be taxed until it sells or it ships. So a lot of solar companies love this. So what they'll do is they'll import the product into the free trade zone, and then they'll have this glut, like, 500 containers worth or something like that. And then they'll slowly start selling it off. So as they sell it off, that's when they're paying the taxes on it. And so, and what that allows them to do is they're still going to pay the taxes. It's just a deferment of the tax payment. Yeah. But there are other things that you can do. You can receive multiple components of a final product, do some light kitting work, some assembly, and then it automatically changes the importation code to a whole new tax structure. These are things that warehouses and logistics partners can do and help their customers out with. And I think in this ever evolving, changing world, I mean, I don't foresee American consumerism going anywhere anytime soon. Like, logistics providers, partners, we really just have to figure out how can we be value add, and the people who are going to win are the people who can solve the most problems.
No, that's great. I love good, actual, tangible suggestions like that. As succinctly as possible, Mark, what's kind of the end all be all goal of the company Warehouse Republic?
You get into, for us, it's serve as many people as possible, create a business I'm proud of. So.
Cool. Love it. Before we wrap up, I always ask my guests the same last final question, essentially revolving around how in the e-commerce industry, most entrepreneurs and professionals are operating around the clock. I imagine running a warehouse, you're probably always on call, and it's difficult to find work-life harmony in this industry, and it's extremely stress-inducing and can take a toll on mental health. So my question to you is, Mark, what sort of hobbies or interests or things do you pursue in your free time to establish healthy work-life harmony and good, stable mental health?
So prior to 2 years ago, I got a dog. So, I mean, I spent a lot of time with the dog, doing dog training, but mountain biking, partner standing acrobatics, used to ride a motorcycle, and then had a 23-day hospital stay. So I no longer ride a motorcycle.
Oh, no.
But a lot of, not like base jumping, adrenaline junkie type stuff, but a lot of like, let's get the, active meditation type thing,
I
things where
can
it's like,
get you there.
yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah. So I mean, yeah, cycling two wheels is better than four, in my opinion, always. And yeah, partner acrobatics is like a cool, fun one.
No, that's very cool. That's awesome stuff. And Mark, it's been a pleasure talking with you. Very interesting conversation, and good luck to the future of your company, my friend.
I certainly appreciate it. Thank you so much for the time.
Yeah, have a good one.